Dragon Age is back, but is it what we expected, or could this be the final nail in the coffin for BioWare as a developer? What's up guys, it's your boy Lordology here, and in today's video I'm going to be breaking down and giving my thoughts on the latest reveal and gameplay trailers for Dragon Age the Veilguard. And man do I have some thoughts on this. Of course, everything I'm going to get into is just my opinion, as I am a newcomer to the series, as I started playing the trilogy several months ago, but it's already becoming one of my favourite video game trilogies, which I think says a lot about the quality of the older games. But with that being said, let's jump straight into it. From the first impressions that I got from the gameplay reveal, there's one word that jumped out to me after I finished watching it, and that word is generic. Everything from the gameplay, combat, HUD, art style, tactics, and dialogue, nothing about this gameplay reveal has an inkling of Dragon Age in it. And to me, it appears as if the people making this love the idea of Dragon Age, but not the reality of it, which is why the companions and tone that we've been shown so far reminds me heavily of Mass Effect Andromeda and its departure from what made the OG Mass Effect trilogy so special. Like for example, the MCU type quips and dialogue in Andromeda make you feel like the people behind that game didn't fully understand or grasp what made Mass Effect special, which is why Andromeda is the black sheep of the Mass Effect series, and that is exactly how Dragon Age the Veilguard is looking like right now. The parallels between Andromeda and Veilguard are pretty worrisome because, as many fans know, if Veilguard does poorly, then it's very likely we'll never get to see the next Mass Effect game. But maybe that's not the worst thing in the world, since the golden age of BioWare is a far distant memory. The Veilguard dialogue that's been shown gives off and has MCU type quips similar to Andromeda, and the delivery of the lines seems very janky, and it heavily reminds me of the terrible dialogue that we've gotten from the more recent Assassin's Creed games. It's like modern day devs and writers don't understand how real people talk to each other, which is funny given that a game like Dragon Age Origins, or hell, even Assassin's Creed 1 or the OG Mass Effect, did a far better job of that, and those games are now over 10 years old at this point, which is a pretty worrisome thought. The combat itself is a massive downgrade from Inquisition 2 and Origins, and it heavily reminds me of Hogwarts Legacy for some reason, which it's not a bad idea to take inspiration from other games, but this is supposed to be a Dragon Age game, right? Flashy combat itself isn't necessarily a bad thing, but the Dragon Age trilogy is more about function before flash and not the other way around, with emphasis on classic RPG mechanics, tactics, and builds, and also having at least 10 ability slots available at your disposal. Well, at least in Inquisition and DA2. In Origins, you could use as many abilities as you liked. So clearly the development of these systems is just going backwards, just like how in the OG Mass Effect trilogy you had 8 abilities at your disposal, but in Andromeda you only had, and yep, you guessed it, 3 abilities. I think you guys can see very clearly where I'm going with this. The graphics presented in the showcase are not that impressive and reminds me a lot of the late 2010s era, though honestly if you're playing Dragon Age for graphics, then brother, you're in the wrong place. The design choices and art style of the enemies is also a massive downgrade from what we've experienced in the series so far. Like, for example, the design of all the demons escaping the Fade just look like generic monsters from Hogwarts Legacy, and not at all like the terrifying creatures that these demons actually are, like the appearances of the Sloth and Pride demons in Dragon Age Origins. They still look absolutely fantastic, and to this day they are still very creepy and are difficult enemies to defeat, instead of the Fortnite looking enemies in the gameplay reveal. And again, similar to Andromeda, the design of the enemy archetypes and the design of the other alien races compared to the OG trilogy are a massive downgrade as well. Just take a look at how the Solarians, Krogans and Turians look in Andromeda compared to how they look in the OG trilogy. It's literally a night and day difference, and again has me more concerned with what BioWare has shown us so far for the Veilguard. The lack of a tactic system, not being able to switch to other companions, and having one less party member are all red flags for Dragon Age fans. It seems like the devs want to try to cater to both new and old audiences, which makes absolutely no sense to me. Alienating an existing fanbase and fundamentally changing what makes your series unique and special is so common in the gaming industry nowadays, but it's not what the fans of the series actually want. And instead of going all in on making something unique like Dragon Age Origins for example, what you have is another Andromeda type game where, similar to the new Assassin's Creed games, where everything feels safe, generic, and not at all special or unique, which goes against everything this series is known for. And I haven't even touched on the art design and colour palette of the Veilguard yet, which doesn't look anywhere close to a Dragon Age game, and the lack of blood and grit in the gameplay reveal compared to Origins feels again like the less gritty take on what this series actually is. Most people need to remember that this trilogy and all its subsequent lore is directly inspired by Martin's Game of Thrones and Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, which I think the OG trilogy does a fantastic job of delivering, especially with Origins, And you can even tell that games like Origins heavily inspired some of the greatest games ever made, like Baldur's Gate 3 for example. The camp system, the companions, the choices you make impacting the state of the world, and the soundtrack in Baldur's Gate 3 heavily reminds me of what Origins did before it. And quite honestly, this may be a hot take, but I actually prefer Origins over Baldur's Gate 3. The tone, the dialogue, the world building, the lore, the companions, all of it still holds up so well even to this day, much similar to the OG Mass Effect games. But Dragon Age the Veilguard or even Mass Effect Andromeda? Not so much. What we've seen so far doesn't even resemble that, and even in comparison to the excellent companions of Dragon Age 2 and Inquisition, the Veilguard companions look much more like Overwatch characters and again heavily remind me of the many generic party members we get in Andromeda. It's also been revealed that every companion in the Veilguard will be romanceable regardless of gender or race. Now I think this is a massive issue for the series as a whole, and the reason why is because that means that all of your companions in Veilguard won't have preferences. Like for example, a character like Morrigan is only romanceable by male warden characters, which is a preference of hers, and it makes her feel more like a real life person with her own wants and desires. And it also makes you want to play again as a female character, because only female characters can romance Alistair, and if you want your warden to marry Alistair and even become queen, you can only do that if your femme warden is a human noble, which adds a lot of weight to your choice of not only the background of your character, but the gender as well, which is fantastic for an RPG. Even in Inquisition, if you want to romance Sarah, you can only do so as a female Inquisitor, and the same goes for Solus. But if you're a female human Inquisitor and not an elf, then Solus won't be interested in you. A character like Cassandra, for example, can only be romanced by male Inquisitors, which again, makes your choices actually mean something because it actually affects the relationships of your companion members as well as the replayability of a game as an RPG, which is a staple of the original Dragon Age trilogy. But in the Veilguard, you can romance literally anyone regardless of gender or race, which defeats the purpose of doing multiple playthroughs, even if it has these 6 faction choices. Little pieces of extra dialogue don't make up for creating interesting characters with their own opinions, values, wants, needs, and desires, but apparently that won't be a thing in the Veilguard if you can literally romance anyone. Now I know this video has been mostly negative, but I've come to really love and cherish the Dragon Age franchise for all of its fantastic lore and characters, and even after playing the trilogy for the first time in 2024, Origins is easily my favourite in the series, and to me it represents what Dragon Age is and should be. Of course, all of these points I've made are just my opinion, and it is my hope that BioWare can prove me wrong and that Veilguard turns out to be one of the best games in the series. And while I highly doubt that statement, I'm really hoping that they can pull this off, as I think the series deserves nothing less than the utmost love, attention, and care that it very much deserves. Anyway, that's all I've got for today, and now I want to hear from you guys. Do you agree with my points of what we've been shown from all of the Dragon Age the Veilguard reveals so far, or do you completely disagree? Or are you perhaps somewhere in between, or are maybe hopefully optimistic? Either way, let me know in the comments, and I would like to say a massive thank you to my channel members for supporting my content, and if you guys want to see more content like this, then consider giving the video a like, and if you want to see much more Dragon Age videos, then consider subscribing. With that being said, I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Cheers.